Sup? Hello again, everyone. If you can see myself as Reese again, then you know what time it is. We are doing this again. So, as you all know, I have created a small little teaser for my upcoming Danganronpa plush series, Murderous Mayhem. This series, I am promising with all my heart, will be the best Danganronpa series to exist on my channel, and be a better one than the last two, with a bigger cast, an original mastermind plan, murders, and much, much more. I am very excited for it. But for this video, I wanted to do something just a tad bit different than normal. I want to discuss something I haven't seen many Danganronpa creators do with their fangans, and since I have two of them before this new one releases, those being Mixed Despair and Killing Server, I figured we have some fun, and rank all my Danganronpa murder cases. Yes, you heard me, we are ranking all 10 of the murder cases from both series. I will say now that the ranking will be off my opinions and faults of these series and how I personally view them. But before we start, I have to cover, rules. Trust me, I hate this part too. The rules to the ranking will be decided by the following 5 factors: the victim, the culprit, the motive, how well and original the case was, and how well it was set up. Secondly, I will not be ranking the final cases of each, because they are all horrible and pointless plot dumps. I mean it. Thirdly, and again, these are my personal preferences of my own creations, and I have plenty to talk about which I dislike about them, and also like. Not to mention, saying all my problems with them aloud may make me notice some changes I need to make with my next killing game cases. Either way, I don't feel like we should be wasting time. How about we get started in ranking all 10 of these cases, shall we? I will say now, I love all of these cases, even those which are a bit terrible I have a little bit of love for. However, one of these cases has to be at the bitter bottom of this list, and I already know which one deserves that spot, despite my positive sayings. Yeah, this is the worst out of all of them. The very first case I ever made. There is a lot about this one I don't like. Hell, it doesn't even hit all the 5 factors I spoke I would be in the ranking these cases on. It has a terrible victim, terrible culprit, the case was slightly original, the motive didn't impact the reason they committed murder, and it was terribly set up. The victim was the mastermind, Minion, and the one who kills him is Winnie the Pooh. Yeah, you heard me right, the honey-sucking bitch killed the unkillable monster. This is just bad. Terrible. The motive was the OG videos from the OG Danganronpa. Now that would have been a good reason to murder, however, it wasn't why Pooh did it. It was because they were in a previous killing game and wanted revenge on the mastermind. That plot twist for the finale was not put out well at all. It honestly sucked. The case itself also had numerous clues which just seemed ridiculous, like the hairpiece just being there for filler, and the weird wooden trap thingy that didn't do much in the end. I didn't like it, or any of this case to be honest, and the execution was so meh, I despised too much of it. However, I will say that this was my first attempt at a murder case, but I had much more planned out, and to see this one fail so bad, it definitely taught me for all the rest of the cases beyond this point for Mixed Despair and Killing Server. So I'm not going to stick and spoil myself talking about it. Let's just move on to the next one already. Because let's be honest, if I did stick around and say everything bad about this one, I'd be here forever. Okay, now that we finished getting through the hell of the last one, I feel it's only fair we get to something slightly better than that one. And I mean slightly because this next case showed zero improvement to its predecessor. Both first cases at the bottom of the list? I'm certain most of you weren't expecting that, but here it is. Now, I will say this case has slightly improved since the last one, but knowing I placed them this low, it obviously did not learn from the last series before this one in this case. Many of the other factors are the same level as the last, but just slightly better. The only major and biggest improvement this one had was setting up the case. A lot happened in this first chapter despite only being 1 episode long, but it did its job well for preparing everyone for the murder. Everything else? The only real reason the characters who ended up dying here did die was so that I could get these useless ones out of the way for the better character development. After all, Blue Toad and Elekid had nothing going for them, and they had a worse plot than Winnie and Minion, and beyond that, nothing big really happened from all of this. I will say, however, the last part of this trial, the final blow of the argument armament in specific, really sucked. It's as bad as SDRA2's final blows in their argument armaments. Having Elekid be found out because of a height difference was dumb. What I should have done is made the final blow only he can make the clock work. Because the clock Elekid hid with him was what told him when to leave, and since it was electric, he could have used his powers to activate it, his talent, which would have worked much better. But I was a dumbass back then, and I did not care. Now, that begs the question, as to why this one was supposedly better than the last. It's because this case had a better direction and wasn't so random with it, like the last one was with its clues. The characters may have been worse and didn't have as much plot, but the case was more straightforward and you could follow it without it having multiple little unnecessary plot points that made no sense with Mixed Despair 1. Is that to say that this case was better? Yes, but is it the best? Easily not. There are plenty more better, and we still have a lot to talk about, so I'm gonna leave this one be for now, and let's go ahead and move on to the next case, shall we? I will say this now, the numbers for number 8 and 7 were easily the hardest case placements for me to rank them on. Even though they haven't been revealed yet, I can promise you that they were very hard to rank. Even if both were terrible, it was hard to decide which one was slightly better than the other, because both were very even. However, after much consideration, I figured out which one is worse and which one is slightly better. Now moving on to number 8. Yep, the one trial that got the most popular out of a killing server is in 8th place. I can already see all of you clicking off the video, but trust me, I have plenty of reasons why I chose this one so low on the list. First of all, I want to start with the things that this case did excel in. The killer was great. That was one of the first factors that made this case so good. Monomon was a great killer and set up a great plan with Quirrell as an accomplice, and they did well for murdering Glaceon. Glaceon as a victim, though, wasn't portrayed very well. I've been told by a lot of my friends that she had great character development for what she had, and it could have gone a lot farther if she stayed alive. Honestly, I've actually had some friends tell me that having Glaceon alive instead of Rousey might have been a better option. But honestly, I didn't feel the same way. I felt Glaceon was garbage and had to go, which is kind of what I did. And I don't feel like I played it off too well either. Sure, the way the case was set up with the motive was pretty good, but the case itself, it could use a lot of work to it. It's very simple and very plain. It's simpler than I would have liked it to be. It feels like a Chapter 1 case. It feels like it, not a Chapter 2. I was really trying to replicate what I did with Mixed Despair 2 with that one, but didn't go out so well. It actually went out a lot worse, actually. Overall, I still like this case back then, but watching it back now, there could have been much more done to it to make it a lot better. Sure, every character got great character development in this chapter. The killer, Monomon, and their accomplice, Quirrell. And it was a great murder, but I feel like the way the murder played out could have a lot more work to it. I mean it though, I really do. There isn't much of an intro for this one, because I already said what I had to with number 8. Now then, I'm also certain you all are questioning why number 4 is higher than case 2. But don't worry, I have an answer, so don't click off yet. Like I said earlier, that both cases were very close to each other, and it was very hard to decide which one was better than the other. However, I chose case 4 that was better than case 2. Why is that? Well, let's go over it. Both cases are very similar, and both had great killers. Monomon and Telltale did their roles fantastically. The victims, they were all semi-alright for what they were. Same goes for the motives. And for setting up the murder, the daily lives gave what they gave for how bad Killing Server was with the daily lives. So, if they're quite even, what is it that puts Case 4 ahead of Case 2? One simple thing. The way the case played out. Unlike Case 2, Case 4 actually feels like it belongs somewhere else besides feeling like a Chapter 1 murder. It feels like where it's supposed to be, a Chapter 4 murder. Unlike Case 2, which felt like the Chapter 1 murder. This case was much more directive at the same time. Much more directive than Case 2 was, and how I was similarly agreeing with how Case 1 of this series did the similar thing. It made sense. All of it did. It made sense why Goomba reacted the way he did. It made sense why Telltale reacted the way he did. And it made sense why the case played out the way it did. Because not only was it the only logical way for it to happen, there weren't any other inconsistencies that blocked it, and it was straightforward. It was a lot better to understand, and it felt more like a Danganronpa trial. Also, in my opinion, this one came out with better character development than the last one. Mama and Telltale, I was really struggling to give them character development until this chapter came along, and I think it did that phenomenally. The final execution was great at solidifying Mama's character and Telltale's at the same time. Also, I will say, this case still is not perfect. There's many flaws to it in its case. Yes, it's better and feels better, and although it seems like I'm complimenting it a lot, there are still many bad things wrong with the case itself that make no sense. Like the screen and using the knife to do like a weird, I guess, cliche move you can call it to turn it on. That was a bit on edge, and there were a lot of other parts like that in this case. So it's definitely not top tier and does not deserve to be in the max highest spot. However, this next one, the one before the top 5, is at that spot. Well, close anyways. Woo, we're finally back to the mixed despair cases, thank goodness. I get you guys were kind of getting annoying talking about Killing Server 3 times in a row. But don't worry, now we're back onto Mixed Despair. So yes, Case 5 of Mixed Despair is the 6th rank thing. Why is that? After all, this case isn't bad, it's actually pretty good, and you'd think it'd have to be enough to deserve it into a spot in the top 5. But sadly, no. And there's a good reason for that, which I'm about to explain. Simply put, the case can be confusing at times. See, the case was around the daily life. In the daily life, they had to try and get Monokuma to a part of the building where Essie, another robot, could control them and help them all get out of the place. However, at the end of this, Leonardo, the Ultimate Ninja, gets killed by Monokuma's self-destruction. Now, when I say killed by Monokuma's self-destruction, that isn't exactly what happens. See, someone loosened the roof, so when they got thrown up into the air, it would come down crashing onto Leonardo. The only issue with this is not only does it make Monokuma technically the killer, it also makes Leonardo's murder a suicide. However, because of my logic, I bullshitted my way out of this and made it so that Ennard loosened the roof and that he was the killer. That's kind of bullshit, and it's not how the case works. But is that to say people would care about this? Not really, because the case was already really well to begin with. The main problem was that a lot of people got not so invested in the series at this point, so it was very hard to create a convincing case. But those who did stick around, I feel like were not disappointed with what the case was. It was really enjoyable, and it was easily the most mysterious and the hardest to figure out the culprit with, unlike some other cases of that series. Everyone blopping in and out in this entire murder and situation, it's hard to tell who the murderer was. Also, everyone had great character development throughout the series, and for it to come to this as the ending, it's really good and hard to tell what's going on. and I feel like that's why I really love this case, but it's definitely not enough to go to the top 5, even though I really like it. Lastly, I found Ennard a very good culprit. He was really enjoyable, especially through the daily lives, and he's kind of what made everything start off for that series. And although he sucked as the mastermind for Killing Server, he was really good here, and I really enjoyed it. Yeah, overall, I really like this case. However, it still has a lot of faults going for it, and I can see why lots of people don't like it. After all, the case can be confusing, but it's still good once you finally understand what's going on in the murder case, so I have to give it props for that. However, we still have 5 more to get through, so let's go ahead and do that. Alright, we are at the top 5 of this list. From here on out, I'm going to say a lot more positive things than negative things about these trials. But a lot of the negatives, still, even with being on the top 5, I still have some problems with most of the cases. Except for the final 3, that is. The final 3 are pretty good. But we still have 2 more to get through, so I'm going to speak my mind and go on to number 5. Here we go. I know a lot of people say that Danganronpa fangame creators and just Danganronpa themselves have terrible third cases. However, considering I have this first case up in the top 5, along with the other that I have hidden the current position of for you all, this high up, obviously I feel that it's a pretty decent well played for what it was. When I first made this case, I knew how much people didn't like the third cases in Danganronpa, so I wanted to make something at least a little bit interesting. And to be honest, I did that pretty well with setting up this murder case in general. Having everyone figure out who the heck Essie was and how everything going on with Squirtle, I feel like was pretty good. And having them involved in helping the trial was really nice, and I feel like I did a pretty good job at doing that. I also wanted to strive and make the case enjoyable, while also very, very interesting and dark, since that's kind of the point of the Chapter 3 murders. I feel like I did that expertly with Mega Man's death. That death was played out very well, and it was very enjoyable to everyone who watched it. Even if it was very sad at the end, and sure, Mega Man didn't do much, it was still a very sad death. Speaking of the characters, I feel they're the reason this chapter wasn't as good as it was made out to be. Sure, Peach and Mega Man being Chapter 2 deaths were good, but I killed them off for the same reason people killed their Chapter 3 murderers. The reason is because they're useless, and they have to go. That's kind of what I did here, and I kind of wish I didn't, and I had a different reason. Shadow was predictable as a killer as well. So, all 3 of them weren't exactly that fun as victims and killers. Was the case still amazing? Yes. It was really good. I really loved the way it was set up, and I loved everything that happened in between. With Pac-Man's alibi, Peach being found dead, and Mega Man falling from the rooftops to die. Although the execution was also poor in this one, it's all I could have done to kill someone like Shadow the Hedgehog, you know what I mean? Either way, I really enjoyed this case, and it was quite fun to make, but definitely not on the top 3 or the highest ones. I've said this before, and I'll say it again. I really did not like Killing Server. There was a lot wrong with it, and it was very much an embarrassment. There's a reason why I've been spending so much time trying to make the next series as perfect as can be, and I feel like I'm doing a very good job, and you guys won't be disappointed when that comes out. But, considering there's 4 placements left, of course some of the Killing Server cases had to be good, right? Well, you're right. There were some that were good. And that's gonna be the next one. I think this is easily the one most people would disagree with my placement. After all, I don't think enough people were invested towards the end to care about this case. However, the reason it's this high is because it's great when it comes to its characters, the victim, the killer, and the way it was set up, along with it being such a puzzle of a murder. Although I believe it was quite easy for most people to predict that Squirtle, after returning, would die at some point, I don't blame them, because it kind of was easy to expect. You wouldn't see the same character living twice. But I feel like people were sad to see Squirtle go the way he did. A murder that looks like he's already dead become oh, he's actually alive, but then he dies again, but it's not really Squirtle. The real Squirtle is hidden inside the suitcase. Yeah, no one's expecting that. Also, the case is more of a puzzle because it's very hard to figure out at first. You're not really understand what is going on, especially with the Monokuma file and everything else, and none of the characters truly have any good ideas as to what could actually be going on. At least until you get to the trial, that is, and it gets explained. And the setting up of Squirtle's death, I think, is what made it so good to many people. Also, I bet it was very hard to figure out which of the 5 members, excluding Luigi, could have possibly killed Squirtle. After all, so many of them have great character development at this point. So, except for one, that is, Rouse. So I'm pretty certain a lot of people thought that they were going to be the one to kill Squirtle. Surprise, surprise, it's the one who got more character development than them, Bowser Jr. Although that's probably the most suckiest part of this trial, I feel like since both of them ended up surviving in the end, it really didn't matter that much. So, yeah, I'm not really one to judge about this trial, but honestly, I really enjoyed it. I also understand people who should have said Junior died, but honestly, I don't care. I know all you viewers probably know what the last 3 cases left on the list are, if you have been counting, that is. Anyways, I'm not going to be wasting much time, since we've already gone quite far into the video. I don't want to waste talking about this little intro here, instead of getting to the last 3. So, let's move on to the third to last one, alright? Alright, this is the last killing server case of the ranking. Number 3 is the highest out of all killing server cases, and it's a really great case 3 case. I mean it. It has a lot going for it that was really good. One major improvement this case has compared to other case 3 murders is that it's not the same killer who kills both participants. It's 2 different killers. Not to mention, I feel like it was very surprising to find out Mischievous managed to kill one of the characters. You would think she managed to also kill Mimikyu, her boyfriend, but no, learning it was Spamton is a big plot twist I think was handled very well. Another big moment that comes as a big surprise is when you find out that Lancer was the one who actually tried to kill Mischievous, and that her murder against him was a complete accident, and almost self-defense really. I also know that a huge chunk of my viewers liked her character development because of this. She became a really good character, and a lot of people hope she survived to the end because of it. And she did. And she got featured in another series, so that's something else. It just shows how much I liked her as well. It was very heart-wrenching to find out that Mimikyu died by someone else's hands, especially how much they cared for each other in the series, Mischievous and Mimikyu. But I have to admit, I feel like both murders were played out very well and really helped the case. Sure, they were more useless murders, but the way they were presented made it not feel that way. And that's what made it so good. So the setting up for this case was amazing. Having Goomba go missing over protecting the box for like the entire episode, it's a big reveal and you actually get concerned for him. Although it's like a Hagakure situation, I feel like it was played much better than Hagakure did himself, honestly. And when you finally do find Goomba, there's a lot of suspicion cast on him because of where he claims to be and everything else. So Spamton was a great killer, he had great motive, and I feel like he did really well, especially in how they figured out it was him. Overall, this was a pretty good case and easily the best one out of Killing Server, but definitely not the best. After all, we still have 2 more cases to go. Oh, speaking of those last 2 cases, why don't we move on to them already? For those who have lasted this long into the video, we have finally made it to the hardest number to come across in any ranking video. Number 2, the second to last place, the second to best. Which of the final 2 cases will it be? Well, if you've been on my channel long enough, you probably know which one it is. This case is nearly great. It's almost as good as what the top tier one's gonna be, which you all probably know now that I've revealed this one. So, what do I like about this one? Well, a lot of things actually. Now, to start off, this case I like to refer to as the 4P case, because this case revolves around the 4 characters with the letters starting with P. Poppy, the victim; Purple, the crazy one; Poplio, the one who almost died by Poppy and was getting tricked; and Pac-Man, the murderer. After Purple's little rampage, we find out Poppy ended up dying, and so one of these 3 suckers, Poplio, Purple, and Pac-Man, had to be one of the ones who killed him. However, although this case is super obvious, because once you go over the alibis you immediately can tell it's Pac-Man, it's not a reason to hate this case, because it's really good. The motives set it up fantastically. Same with Purple's outburst. Honestly, that's kind of the thing with Mixed Despair in all its cases. All of them had a great setup beforehand that made things go out super well. For example, Chapter 2 had the banging sound, Chapter 3 had Pac-Man getting passed out, Chapter 4 had Purple's rampage, and Chapter 5 had the entire chase around Monokuma. Essentially, all were really good, and it's a huge plot twist once you find out that Poppy was trying to kill Poplio so she could get out the killing game, but that ended up failed by Pac-Man's trap. And although I know how many people have cliched saying Pac-Man has no arms, he should not have been able to swing the water ball and kill him, I'm not upset with that, because this case is so good otherwise. Speaking of Pac-Man, she was a really great killer. And honestly, because he was so liked in the series, this was the most shocking killer reveal out of all of them, easily. And he was a really good character. He was always the first one to get countered in any non-stop debate. And seeing him become the killer was much of a surprise, but really well done. Even though there's so much I like this case, it does not top the top tier of this list. And so we're still gonna have to talk over that. But overall, this case was fantastically set up, especially with all the targets and everything else. This is easily one of the best ones. Alright, I already know that all of you know which one of these cases is number 1 and takes the cake for it. So let's not waste time. Let's get to it already. Yes, Danganronpa Mixed Despair Case 2 is the best one out of all 10 of the murder cases I have created in my Danganronpa series. And that's saying a lot, considering that the first case of Mixed Despair was the worst one on this list, and this next one of Mixed Despair is the best. That's such a big leap in change that it's almost unbelievable. First, let's go in order with all the reasons why I like this case in order. Out of the 5 lists that we created, we would be ranking these cases on. To start off, the victim and the killer. Mugman was a perfect victim, and an unpredictable one at that. No one expected him to die in this chapter. After all, the last we see him is 6 minutes before his eventual death. So that says quite a lot. And when you learn how fast this case was for the killer, it's a really shock because you wonder how they managed to get all of this done so quickly. But along with this, the culprit had to have gone through numerous obstacles to get to where they had to. After killing Mugman, they had to clean up the scene, flee somehow, while going over numerous obstacles in other rooms in order to get to safety. While doing so, creating 2 loud bangs which alerted everyone of Mugman's potential death. This feels like Chapter 2 of Danganronpa V3 with how convoluted it is, and difficult to pull off, but the killer did. And it's really hard to identify who the killer is because of all these numerous factors. The one possible person who could have killed Mugman is none other than Yoshi, the ultimate gourmet. The only reason that is possible is because of their flutter kick ability, which lets them jump in the air longer, and was how they managed to make the gap from the secret room all the way to the library and downhill with their tongue. Yet after it's revealed, it's very hard to believe it's Yoshi immediately, especially since so many other characters this chapter got character development, like Purple and Pac-Man. But once you learn the truth, you honestly know it's Yoshi, and that's exactly how Danganronpa trials work. You don't believe it's the killer at first, but then it's revealed once you expose it all, and it's really good at doing that. But it's not as good as the reason why Yoshi committed murder. You think the reason that Yoshi killed Mugman was because Yoshi was the hacker and learned a dark truth about Mugman and had to get rid of them. But it was the other way around. Mugman was this motive's hacker, and he was hacking Yoshi. That's why he had to get rid of him. It's a huge twist that I don't think a lot of people saw coming, and it really proved how crazy Yoshi can be to hiding his own secrets. And lastly, the execution. Oh my god, the execution was amazing. Having Yoshi escape the initial trap only to end up dying at the end because Monokuma cut off their tongue, the thing that makes up the Yoshi, is amazing. Overall, this case was the best. It was fantastic and got a 5 across the board out of all topics. It was perfect setup, perfect victim, perfect motive, perfect killer, and the perfect murder plan. If there's any case I'm hoping to recreate for the next series, it's definitely going to be one with all 5 of these. And that's it, everyone. That is the end of this ranking video, with the worst case officially being Mixed Despair Case 1 and the best being Mixed Despair Case 2. I can promise all of you now that the next upcoming cases for my new Danganronpa series will be way better than these ones. After all, I have spent almost a year preparing them, so trust me. Anyways, I hope all of you who did stick around to watch this long video enjoyed yourselves watching it. And it was very fun to make in the process, even if it has taken me a while to make all this and edit it together. Anyways, I will see you all soon. Who knows, I may do another Reese video like this. So, without further ado, I think it's time we end this video. Thank you all for watching, and I hope to see you again soon in whatever next project I end up making. Goodbye for now.